Are you with us, Senator Cruz?
I am.
So everyone listening, this is Senator Ted Cruz from Texas, who has been really, I think, leading a movement in the Senate to bring transparency and accountability back to Congress, which would be a brand new thing for a lot of people. So, Senator Cruz, go ahead.
Well, good evening, everyone. I want to thank you for joining us. I appreciate your active engagement, and actually the word just referenced there, accountability, I think is critical. Because at the end of the day, all 100 senators, all 435 members of the House work for the American people. And there is nothing more potent than grassroots activists when we are engaged. What I'd like to say briefly is three things. Number one, this bill is a mess. It repeats the same mistakes that Congress made in 1986. In 1986, Congress came to the American people and said, we'll offer you a deal. We will grant amnesty to the some 3 million people who are here illegally. And we'll do so in exchange for securing the borders, for permanently fixing the problem. What Congress told the American people is, once we do that, illegal immigration will go away. We will solve this problem. The American people took that exchange. And what happened, sadly and predictably, was the amnesty occurred, and the borders never got secured. The promised enforcement never happened, and now, some 3 decades later, we're back again having the same conversation, except instead of 3 million people here illegally, it's now roughly 11 million. And this Gang of 8 bill has the exact same deal that was present in 1986. It grants immediate legalization, and it promises border security maybe someday in the future. In my view, I don't think the American people are foolish enough to accept that deal a second time. We have seen demonstrated as a factual matter, as a practical matter, it does not work. I think there's huge bipartisan agreement among the American people, both Republican and Democrat, that we have a broken immigration system, that we need to finally get serious about securing the borders, about stopping illegal immigration, and that we need to improve and streamline our legal immigration system to make it work well, to remain a nation that doesn't simply welcome but that celebrates legal immigrants. In my view, that's the path for addressing this, and this bill doesn't do that. This bill, if it is passed into law, will make the existing problems worse. This bill, if it's passed into law, will encourage future illegal immigration, will encourage future human tragedies as women and children entrust themselves to coyotes, to traffickers, they're sexually assaulted, they're left to die in the desert. This is not a humane system. And if this bill passes, we can know with absolute certainty that in 10 or 20 or 30 years, we'll be back here having the exact same debate yet again, except instead of 11 million people here illegally, it would be 20 million or 30 million and decades more of tragedy. This bill is a bill that does not work, does not solve the problem, and in my view is contrary to the strong views of the American people. A second point I wanted to make to everyone, that there is one particular aspect of this bill that I think is uniquely pernicious, and I think the more the American people understand it and realize how it operates, the more opposed they will be to this bill. And that is how the Gang of 8 bill operates in tandem with Obamacare. Because the way it is written, this bill amounts to de facto affirmative action for those who are here illegally. Let's suppose you are a small business owner that owns a business with, say, 100 employees, and you are contemplating hiring 5 new employees. The Gang of 8 bill exempts illegal immigrants who would get what's called RPI status from Obamacare. If you as a small business owner wanted to hire a U.S. citizen or a legal permanent resident, you would either have to provide full-fledged health insurance for that employee, or you would face what could be a $3,000 fine per employee, which when you factor in the tax treatment works out to about $5,000 per employee. In effect, that means that it is roughly $5,000 more for you to hire a U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident than it is for you to hire someone who is here illegally. And that's the effect of this proposal, is every U.S. citizen suddenly has an Obamacare penalty if he or she gets hired. Every legal permanent resident, every legal immigrant who waited in line for years suddenly has an Obamacare penalty if he or she gets hired. And the only people exempted from the Obamacare penalty are those who are here illegally. Now, the proponents of this bill have belittled this as a small consequence. But if you're running a small business, let's suppose you're hiring 5 new employees, the difference is that's $25,000 every year between hiring 5 people who are here illegally who get these RPI permits versus hiring U.S. citizens or hiring legal immigrants. If you think about it even more starkly, if you're running a small business, the incentive, if you were to fire all 100 of your employees who were U.S. citizens or legal permanent residents and instead hire only those who are here illegally with RPI permits, you would save $500,000 a year. Now, for a small business, that's real dollars, and it makes no sense. And what is striking is the proponents of this bill have not even attempted to defend this preference in hiring for those who are here illegally, because in my view, it is indefensible. It does not make sense to treat those who are here illegally better than U.S. citizens and better than legal immigrants who follow the rules. And toward that end, I've introduced an amendment that would defund Obamacare at a minimum until there were no remaining RPI individuals. Now, that amendment has not been allowed to come up for a vote on the floor of the Senate, and it may well not be brought up, but I think this argument is an important one for people to understand because it really is indefensible on the substance. The final point I wanted to make to everyone is this week is critical. I want to underscore what David Vitter said just a minute ago. I mean, this week is ground zero. It is Harry Reid's intention to vote this bill out by the end of the week, and he right now intends to use every bit of muscle he can to make that happen. I would make the only thing that has the potential to stop that is the men and women on this call. The only thing that has the potential to stop that are the grassroots of America rising up and saying, no, we don't want to go down this path again. We don't want to repeat the steps of 1986. We want to secure the border first before legalization. And so what I would encourage each of you to do this week is the critical battle, is 2 things. Number one, we have launched a national petition at tedcruz.org of tens of thousands of Americans all over the country who have signed up on this petition and have said, we want security first. Secondly, and we have had over 100,000 people in just a week sign this petition nationally. Secondly, no time is it more important than right now for you and your friends and family and everyone you know to pick up the phone and call your U.S. Senator, call your U.S. House member. Get online and email your U.S. Senator, email your U.S. House member. You know, I've had folks ask, do calls to the Senate make a difference? And I think a lot of people are skeptical that they do. I can tell you nothing gets the attention of elected representatives more than having their constituents light up their phones. Every one of us gets a report, typically on a daily basis, of what phone calls came in, what emails came in. And the surest thing to get the attention of, number one, Republicans who are thinking about voting for this bill, and I'll tell you, there are as many as 20 Republicans who are on the fence contemplating voting for this bill. Nothing will get their attention more than hearing from thousands of their constituents this week. And number two, from red state Democrats, from Democrats who go home and campaign and tell their constituents they're conservatives. Nothing will get their attention more than hearing from their constituents. And so now is the time to reach out to the members of the Senate, and now is also the time to reach out to the House, because even if Harry Reid is able to push this through the Senate, at the end of the day, the House is going to have the final say on whether this passes or not, and the more House members hear from their constituents, from the American people, the more likely we are to ensure that any immigration legislation that passes fixes the problem. It secures the border first, and it doesn't repeat the mistakes that we made in 1986.
Senator, thank you very much for that. And I want to remind everyone, if you have a question you want to ask, dial *3, and you'll get into a queue to ask your question. And Senator, we have a challenge from Bonnie in California, who is actually putting this challenge to her own two senators from California, but it's kind of a fun challenge. She's asking, how much of these senators' personal fortunes would they be willing to put on the line, promising the American people that this bill will solve the problem? How many of those senators supporting the bill do you think would be willing to put their own reputation, their own stake on this bill solving the problem?
Well, I think it's a very good question, and I think the answer would be that you wouldn't find a senator willing to put a plumb nickel on the line. We did see back in 1986 a number of senators stand on the floor of the Senate and say, this will solve the problem. This will make illegal immigration go away. I was on the floor of the Senate just a few days ago where Chuck Schumer, the senator from New York, said the same thing, that when this bill passes, illegal immigration will be a thing of the past. And it was striking as he said that it was echoes of 1986. And the truth of the matter is, I don't think any of the proponents of this legislation believe it will solve the problem. What this is all about, I believe, was made perfectly clear in the Judiciary Committee markup when I introduced a number of amendments designed to actually fix the problem, to solve this situation. One of which was an amendment, a very simple amendment, that simply eliminated the pathway to citizenship. In my view, the pathway to citizenship is the most contentious, divisive element of this bill, and so the amendment I introduced would just eliminate that. And Senator Schumer's response, in my view, was very, very revealing. He said, if there is no citizenship, there can be no reform. And I thought that was the clarifying moment of the entire debate, because he made perfectly explicit, and I thanked him for his candor at the hearing, that he has one overarching partisan political objective, and that is a path to citizenship, and that everything else is unimportant compared to that political objective. If he cannot get 100% of his political objective, he's willing to do nothing to secure the borders. He's willing to do nothing to improve illegal immigration. He's willing to do nothing for the 11 million people who are here illegally unless he gets 100% of his partisan political objective. I thought that was a clarifying moment, but it also makes clear that all of the talk about border security, I believe the proponents know full well these provisions won't solve the problem, and in fact, they don't even expect many of them will be implemented. But this is all about focusing on their overarching partisan political objective.
Senator Robert from Ohio wants to thank you for making such a big impact on Rush Limbaugh, and he's hoping that perhaps other like-minded senators might do the same, and you might be able to encourage them to do that.
Well, Robert, thank you for that encouragement. I appreciate that. There have been a number of leaders in the Senate, including my friends Jeff Sessions and David Vitter, both on this call, and Mike Lee and others who have been standing up and trying to effectively highlight the problems here. But let me be perfectly candid. At the end of the day, none of us have the ability to prevent this from happening. No U.S. senator is going to have the ability to stand in the way from this being forced into law unless the American people stand up and speak. At the end of the day, political power is not found in any one U.S. senator or even a handful of U.S. senator. The locus of political power, real authority, is with we the people, is with the American people. And, you know, I got to tell you, thinking back to a recent battle we had in the Senate, which was the battle over Second Amendment rights, where there was huge momentum behind President Obama's efforts to undermine the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens. And what transformed that debate was millions of Americans getting engaged, picking up the phone, reaching out to their senators and saying, no, do not undermine our constitutional rights. Go after violent criminals, but protect our rights. And you saw senator after senator after senator who was prepared to go along with President Obama suddenly switch and turn around. The same thing is true here. The only way we turn this around is if the men and women on this call and thousands of others reach out and demand of our elected officials that they actually represent us, that they be accountable to the American people, and they not give in to the same closed-door deals and mistakes that have characterized Washington politicians for a long, long time.
Senator, I know you're going to have to leave us in a second, but one last question that we've actually got several people asking this. How much of the feedback that your Senate offices are getting has been positive for the bill versus negative?
Well, I'll tell you, in my office at least, and I can't speak for the other senators, but in my office it has been overwhelmingly off the charts opposed to the bill. I mean, our phones have been lighting up with Americans saying, please stop this bill, please don't grant legalization first, and with border security, possibly, maybe, sometime in the future. As I analogized it today on the floor of the Senate, it's very much like that character from Popeye, Wimpy, who said, you know, I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today. The approach of this bill is, you know, we'll gladly secure the border Tuesday for legalization today. That is an approach that doesn't work, and I have to tell you, at least in our office, it has been off the charts, the view of the American people. They don't want to make the same mistakes we made before. And what we've got to make sure is that the other senators, particularly the Republican senators who are on the fence, who are agonizing about what to do, and the red state Democrats who are doing the same, that they hear from their constituents and that they're held accountable. And I'm grateful to all of you for your commitment to do exactly that.
Thank you so very much, Senator. Thank you for all that you do and the battles you wage, and we hope you will keep battling them on our behalf.
You have my word for it. Thank you, and God bless you all.